So there's about 5 layers the way we view local. And at Yext, we particularly focus on the data layer, but we're going to go through all 5 today just to get an understanding of how they work together. And the first layer that we're going to talk about when we go through and we see data, transactions, delivery, algorithm, and interface, we're going to first look at data. And data itself obviously comes in many different forms. This is a huge area that we've seen massive growth, massive trends and changes in. And as it's changing, a lot of the people in this room, as well as a lot of our customers, are trying to struggle with how data works. In fact, in the vendor room there, right next to our booth, there's someone that's actually showing a distributed database and a distributed database technology. And it really tells you something, that at a local street fight conference, you have a database integrator and a database platform that's actually as a vendor here. And it's because we're all struggling with this and trying to figure out how to manage it. So when you think about data itself and how we're tracking and understanding it, the world has evolved to, instead of just having web crawlers, now we have actual street crawlers. And when you think about this device, the Google Street View car, this is an amazing, amazing example of active data acquisition, where this device is going around the world, street by street, corner by corner, and now inside the maps. If you've seen, I recently saw Rooms to Go launch this with Google, where you can walk around their showroom and see it in really phenomenal detail, the same way you can go around a street on Street View. This physical world crawler is actively pulling in data in massive quantities. And as it does that, you have to analyze that data, and it becomes the base layer of the local marketplace. But actively is one way to do it. Another way is to actively have businesses enter their data. And this is where a company like Yext comes in. And there's lots of different businesses that do what we do in a similar fashion of gathering data. They can be gathering data the way an info group does, where they go out and they ask the questions, or they can have it actively come to them through an interface, like our interface here on our dashboard, where an SMB can put in all their data about their hours of operation, their biographies, their events, all of those things. But there's other platforms still which are not just gathering data from an active perspective, meaning with user information, but passively gathering data. So this balance between active and passive, like Waze is taking all the GPS waypoints of all of its different users. I don't know if anyone utilizes the platform, but it's phenomenal in terms of telling you where traffic is and traffic patterns are. And it's analyzing the data in real time of the GPS waypoints of every phone that's signed up for it. But when you think about it, that's a passive acquisition of data, not an active one. So that balance will continue as we look at new technologies that pull those things together. The second layer, which really usually sits right on top of the data, is the algorithm. This is obviously a lot of business listings and people interested in directory listings. Can anyone tell me what is the algorithm for the yellow pages? Anybody? Nobody knows what the algorithm is for the yellow pages? Who said it? Alphabetical. So it's alphabetical. Look, algorithms don't have to be complex, but we have seen massive improvements in algorithms through time. Look, before alphabetically, it was quite a mess, right? Everything was just lying on your kitchen drawer in the junk drawer where you'd find where the next pizza place was. Now it's actually available in an alphabetical listing. As the data is getting more and more complex, we're seeing huge changes in how those algorithms take the data, stratify the data in its priority, and deliver it in real time. That process is going to continue to get more and more developed as our data from the first layer gets bigger and bigger. So as you start to see, and we discussed a little earlier when we were talking about transaction engines, we're actually seeing that those algorithms are going to improve how we interact with such massive data sets. It's not enough anymore just to have alphabetical. People are now searching and looking for information and looking for items, whether it's geofence or it's local or it's, again, by interest or by prioritization. Those algorithms will continue. Let's see. So looking a little further, some of the other algorithms that we're seeing are also contextual based on what's happening around a particular user. That's a very interesting space. So we talk about weather alerts and linking it to selling umbrellas. All of those things happen. We're also getting to suggestive algorithms. That's where they take the data, they're trending out the analysis and figuring out how that ultimately can help us suggest things in a more helpful format. But algorithms are taking a new step almost every day, it seems. So if you've downloaded and utilized Google Now, it's a phenomenal new tool that's starting to really look at that same data layer, build it into your Google experience by reading your emails and all of your information, and figuring out what do you really want to know. So it's already pulling up what the weather is in San Fran, but it's pulling up what the weather for me is at Newark, New Jersey, where I'll land tomorrow. All of those things contextualized very, very cleanly and seamlessly. And now we're getting into a whole new area with Facebook Graph Search. Just by a show of hands, how many people have Graph Search now? Good. So it's a good portion of the room. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty interesting. It basically takes your social data and is now rolling that in, and it's phenomenal in terms of local. And a lot of people are looking at it saying, well, if my network isn't that big or whatever it may be, is that really helpful if I don't have that many friends that have been to too many restaurants? Well, what it does is it doesn't matter whether or not it's just your network. You can type in, I'm looking for a bicycle shop in Manhattan, and it'll actually analyze all the people on Facebook that have said or liked cycling in Manhattan, and it'll analyze which shops they like. So it returns a much broader set. And this is a big change for a lot of platforms out there, which are using either user-generated content or star ratings. It's starting to take that data and make it much more accessible because we've analyzed that the social interest of people in data or location or products and services is very closely correlated to their own social network or other humans that have represented it. In other words, we still don't really trust computers, but we very much trust what other people say. So the next step is the interface, and this is an area that is also seeing some phenomenal changes. When I think of what my children will ultimately deem an interface versus what we grew up with, it's pretty amazing. The change is happening so rapidly. The platform itself and interfaces are things like Siri. So voice activated, being able to see everything via voice and analyze it. Google Maps changes its interface. Just did it again, phenomenally different new interface. Siri, Google Maps. Sorry, I've got two computers going here. Google Glass. Has everyone seen the SNL skit yet on Google Glass? It's awesome. Go download it. It's absolutely hilarious. But again, another interface, another way to interact with data, information, and algorithms. A lot of our partners here at Yext, they're changing their interfaces constantly, analyzing how their users use the information and data and how they pull it together. Yext itself. We just created a new mobile interface to allow people to see their local information and local content in a much more social format. So photos, local content, genuine focus on moments in each individual business and sharing that. So the next one, transactional data. We had Square earlier, as well as Leaf and PayPal. That is one of those last pieces that gets layered in, the fourth layer, where the transaction now becomes more personal, becomes more centered on the actual moment of the transaction. But as you saw from a lot of their discussion, it's focused on that simplicity of the transaction. And that's going to change. It's going to change as these key fobs and these tools that we're using on our credit cards transitions into our phones and allowing the phones to actually do the transaction. And that's going to give way, likely, to a lot of these Fitbits and the watch devices. So we see the Pebble and these other tools that are eventually going to start linking to your transactions. The more seamless that transaction can be while maintaining the authentication necessary for the payment, the more easy and the more uptake you're going to get from a transaction. And then the last item, which is delivery. And delivery is kind of interesting because it's still the last mile problem. And the last mile is being solved humorously in a way that's almost backwards. We're going back to the time where there was one central post office at a particular place where everyone would go that last mile to the central post office. Well, Amazon's got these lockers where you can now go and pick up and avoid that last mile of delivery where just a massive portion of the cost of delivery in the 5 layers takes place. And you wonder, well, that arms race is just getting going, right? So same-day delivery, instant gratification, from the beginning of the data gathered all the way through the transaction and ultimately the delivery goes very, very quickly. What's next? Well, probably the teleporter. And you laugh about the teleporter, is it possible? But a lot of things that we're looking at right now, if you particularly look at the Ptolemy map, for hundreds of years, this was the greatest map of how the world navigated. That, when you look at it now, it's not really that far away to envision some method by which delivery will be instantaneous. And maybe one of those things is 3D printing. So think about all the different ways the layers work together. And the 5 layers from our perspective, it starts with data, it evolves through the interfaces and through the transactions into delivery, but ultimately it's still about finding and discovering and bringing all of those things into one user experience that works across all platforms. Thank you.